Welcome to British Focus, your go-to channel for the latest news, sharp commentary, and insightful reactions from across the UK. Today, we dive into the fascinating and somewhat controversial world of Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Now, isn't it marvellous to have a Chancellor who's done it all? High-ranking roles in the finance sector, a proclaimed chess champion, and a CV that reads like a list of dazzling accomplishments. Except, wait a moment, I'm joking. Rachel Reeves has a track record of bending the truth about her past so much that even she struggles to keep up with the stories she's told. Known by many as Rachel from Accounts, Reeves recently faced some tough questions on Sky News about this very reputation, and we'll be breaking it all down for you. In today's video, we'll watch how she handles the grilling, examine her responses, and reflect on how her narrative impacts the public's perception. Is this a case of ambition gone too far or a simple misunderstanding? Stick with us as we explore all this and more, but before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to British Focus, and join our fast-growing community. You won't want to miss what's coming up next.
Does it hurt you to be described as Rachel from Accounts?
Well, I've probably been called worse things, Trevor, but I became an MP almost 15 years ago now. Before I became a Member of Parliament, I worked as an economist at the Bank of England, and then I worked in the private sector in financial services for Halifax Bank of Scotland. I'm proud of the jobs that I did before I became a Member of Parliament, but in the end, people are going to judge me on the job that I'm doing now, the job that I'm doing as Chancellor of the Exchequer.
But do you think if you were a bloke, that condescending label would be attached to you?
Well, some people don't want this government to succeed. Some people don't want me to succeed. I've spent my life proving people wrong, proving that I can do stuff that I've been underestimated for. In the end, people will judge me. Can I stabilise the public finances? We've done that. Can I grow the economy? I'm determined to do so.
In other news, the tragic case of Simon Vickers and his 14-year-old daughter Scarlett has left a dark shadow over Darlington, raising harrowing questions about trust, family, and responsibility. For those unfamiliar, Simon Vickers, a 50-year-old father, was convicted of murder after fatally stabbing his own daughter in the heart. He described the incident as a play fight gone wrong, but the evidence painted a far more disturbing picture. Scarlett, full of promise and life, died from an 11-centimeter deep stab wound that pierced her chest. It's a detail that's hard to read, let alone imagine, and it leaves one grappling with how such a moment of horror could unfold within a family home. Let's address Vickers' defense first. He claimed it was a freak accident, a playful moment that turned tragic in the blink of an eye. But can an 11-centimeter stab wound really be dismissed as a misstep in the heat of play? Prosecutors firmly argued otherwise, presenting their case that Vickers acted deliberately after becoming irritated with his daughter. The jury, after deliberating over the week-long trial, agreed with the prosecution, rejecting Vickers' testimony and finding him guilty of murder. What makes this even harder to digest is the context in which it all happened. At the time of the incident, Vickers had consumed 4 glasses of wine and smoked a cannabis joint. Did his impaired judgment lead to this devastating outcome, or was it a deliberate act fueled by underlying frustrations? Either way, the end result is the same. Scarlett is gone, and a father is now branded a murderer. What's particularly haunting about this case is the betrayal of trust it represents. A father is meant to be a protector, a figure of safety, not a source of danger. Scarlett's mother, Sarah Hall, was reportedly present in the kitchen when the incident occurred. Imagine the trauma of witnessing such a moment, the unfathomable grief of losing a child, compounded by the knowledge that the fatal blow came from someone meant to love and safeguard her. It's a heartbreak that defies comprehension. The community's reaction has been one of disbelief and sorrow. How could such a tragedy occur in a seemingly ordinary home? It's a grim reminder that domestic violence often hides behind closed doors, and that alcohol and substance use can escalate situations to catastrophic levels. This case also sparks a wider debate about the justice system and whether it adequately handles cases involving impaired judgment. Should intoxication be considered a mitigating factor, or does it simply underscore the recklessness of the offender? In Vickers' case, the jury's verdict was clear: his actions were inexcusable. As we reflect on Scarlett's life, we must also ask ourselves how we, as a society, can prevent such tragedies in the future. It's easy to turn away from stories like this, to dismiss them as rare and isolated incidents. but they serve as stark reminders of the vulnerabilities that exist within families and the need for support systems that address not just the symptoms of dysfunction, but the root causes. So, what do you think? Was justice served in this case, or does the tragedy reveal deeper societal issues that need to be addressed? Let us know your thoughts, and as always, thank you for joining us. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected to British Focus, where we tackle the stories that matter most. In other news, the decision to rename the under-construction hunter-killer submarine from HMS Agincourt to HMS Achilles has sparked a wave of debate, and it's not hard to see why. This isn't just about the name of a submarine. It's about what that name represents: history, tradition, and, let's be honest, a touch of national pride. Defense Secretary John Healey has sought the King's approval to make the change, citing a desire to avoid offending the French due to the historic Battle of Agincourt in 1415. But is this a case of diplomatic sensitivity, or are we crossing into the realm of unnecessary political correctness? Let's start with the Battle of Agincourt itself, a moment etched deeply in British history, immortalized in Shakespeare's Henry V with stirring lines like, "We few, we happy few, we band of brothers." For many, Agincourt symbolizes a triumph of the underdog, a moment when outnumbered English forces triumphed over a much larger French army. Naming a Royal Navy vessel after this battle isn't just a nod to history, it's a statement of resilience, courage, and victory. So, why would we want to erase that connection? Former Defense Secretary Grant Shapps certainly didn't mince his words, labeling the move as woke nonsense. According to Shapps, the name Agincourt carries significant cultural and historical weight, and changing it feels like an unnecessary concession. Is he right? Well, there's certainly an argument to be made that our naval traditions shouldn't be so easily altered to avoid perceived offense. After all, naval vessels named after battles aren't just about commemorating the past, they're about inspiring the present. Removing such a name could be seen as diluting the heritage that gives the Royal Navy its identity. But let's consider the other side for a moment. In today's interconnected world, diplomacy matters. The French are key allies, and some might argue that it's pragmatic to avoid references that could be interpreted as provocative. Still, does this really qualify as a diplomatic faux pas, or are we overthinking it? Would the French even care? It feels like a delicate balance between maintaining tradition and navigating modern sensibilities, but the question remains, are we leaning too far into appeasement at the expense of our own cultural legacy? The decision to rename the submarine to HMS Achilles has its own layers of significance. Achilles, the Greek hero of myth, is a symbol of strength and invulnerability, at least until you remember his infamous heel. While the name carries weight in its own right, it doesn't have the same direct connection to British history as Agincourt. For critics, it feels like a safe, neutral choice, but does it inspire the same sense of pride and identity? That's up for debate. So, where do you stand on this? Is the renaming a necessary step for diplomacy in a modern world, or is it an unnecessary surrender of our naval heritage? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're enjoying this deep dive into British defence and history, don't forget to like and subscribe to British Focus, your source for the stories that matter. In other news, Prince Harry's ongoing legal battle over his security arrangements in the UK has become yet another chapter in the complex and often strained relationship between the Duke of Sussex and his home country. At the heart of this issue is a fundamental question. Should Harry, who stepped back from royal duties in 2020, still be entitled to the high-level police protection that is standard for working members of the royal family? It's a debate that has divided public opinion and laid bare the challenges of balancing personal safety, public responsibility, and family dynamics. For Harry, this isn't just a legal issue, it's deeply personal. He's made it clear that his motivation goes beyond his own safety. It's about his children, Archie and Lilibet. He wants them to know their heritage, to experience England in a meaningful way, and to make memories in the country that shaped so much of who he is. It's hard not to empathize with that desire. After all, what parent wouldn't want their children to have a connection to their roots? But the question remains, how do you ensure that connection when the security concerns are as high-profile and complicated as Harry's? According to sources close to Harry, his goal is straightforward. He simply wants to guarantee his family's safety while they're in the UK. He has argued that without proper security, their visits to Britain are not just impractical but potentially dangerous. It's worth remembering that Harry has been vocal about the threats he has faced, both as a royal and in his post-royal life. His experiences with media intrusion and public scrutiny have undoubtedly shaped his perspective, and for him, the stakes feel incredibly high. But does that justify his appeal to the High Court, particularly when the ruling he's challenging was deemed neither irrational nor unjust? The legal dispute itself stems from the decision by the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures to reduce Harry's security after he stepped back from royal duties. This reduction, Harry argues, unfairly singles him out and fails to consider the unique risks he faces as a globally recognized figure. However, the High Court's initial ruling upheld the decision, noting that Harry's change in royal status naturally impacted the level of security he could expect. The Home Office, for its part, welcomed the ruling, framing it as a reasonable response to Harry's new position outside the royal fold. But is it that simple? Or does Harry have a point when he suggests that his circumstances require special consideration? What makes this case even more complicated is its impact on Harry's relationship with his family. The security dispute has only deepened the rift between Harry and the rest of the royals, particularly his father, King Charles. Reports suggest that Harry believes his father should intervene to help reinstate his full protection. However, royal insiders have pushed back, arguing that it would be wholly inappropriate for the king to challenge a government decision. It's a delicate situation, and one that highlights the fine line between personal loyalty and public responsibility that the royal family must navigate. For Harry, this isn't just about safety, it's about feeling supported and valued by his own family. And for the royals, it's yet another reminder of how challenging it is to manage personal relationships under the relentless scrutiny of public life. The stakes for Harry are high, both personally and professionally. He has positioned himself as someone deeply committed to his patronages and causes, and his ability to continue that work in the UK is directly tied to his security arrangements. Without proper protection, his visits become not just difficult but potentially impossible, limiting his ability to contribute meaningfully to the organizations he supports. For someone who has repeatedly emphasized the importance of service, this represents a significant barrier, and one that is clearly determined to overcome. Public opinion on this issue is, unsurprisingly, divided. Some argue that Harry made his choice when he stepped back from royal duties, and with that choice came certain consequences, including reduced security. Others see his appeal as a reasonable attempt to protect his family in extraordinary circumstances. After all, Harry didn't just leave the royal family. He also exposed himself to a unique set of risks by speaking out about his experiences and advocating for change on sensitive issues. Whether you agree with his decisions or not, it's hard to deny that his situation is far from ordinary. Ultimately, this case raises broader questions about the role of the royal family in modern Britain. Should someone like Harry, who has stepped back from traditional duties, still be entitled to the privileges that come with royal status? Or does stepping back mean relinquishing those benefits entirely? And where does the line between personal responsibility and public obligation truly lie? These are questions that go beyond Harry's individual case, touching on the evolving nature of the monarchy and its place in a changing world. So, what do you think? Is Prince Harry's appeal justified, or does it set a problematic precedent for members of the royal family who choose to step away? Should his unique circumstances be taken into account, or should the rules apply equally to all? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to British Focus for more in-depth discussions on the stories that matter most. We'll see you next time.